Essentially, man is made up of three core components, that being spirit, body, and ego personality. There is also a soul component, which I view as the interface between spirit and body. To keep things simple, and because there are conflicting ideas on the differences between the spirit and the soul, I will focus on the three core components just mentioned. The highest functioning of these is of course spirit, which is the eternal and immortal part of ourselves. It remains beyond the death of the physical body and also exists in a realm of complete oneness, beyond the dualities we experience here on earth. The next component, the body, is what anchors our higher density spirit into our current lower third density earthly realm, allowing spirit to temporarily experience life as a human. The body comes equipped with its own instinctive intelligence, which is highly attuned to ensuring survival within the harsh and volatile earth conditions. This intelligence focuses largely on self-preservation, regeneration, and procreation, ensuring that primal requirements such as food, water, sex, rest, avoidance of injury and predators, touch, and comfort are adequately obtained. The body communicates these needs to us through sensations, drives, impulses, and emotions. It can also communicate messages from spirit to the ego through what we call intuition. The third component, the ego personality, is an illusory creation of the mind that arises from one's beliefs, ideas, experiences, education, and conditioning. This includes one's name, nationality, religious beliefs, titles such as doctor, lawyer, sportsman, and parent, likes and dislikes, habits, and so on. It is illusory because nothing within the ego personality actually exists in tangible form. It is instead comprised of labels that we have given ourselves and then identified with as being real. Despite being illusory, the ego personality is still an important component of our being, as it brings individuality to each person and allows for uniqueness of expression as spirit and body move around in third density. However, the ego personality can become dangerous and destructive when it is severed from the voice of spirit, and when we falsely identify with it as being the true self. Under ideal circumstances, there is complete harmony between these three core components of man, as the body and ego personality surrender their will to the will of spirit, both honoring and trusting its supreme wisdom and higher guidance. In this scenario, both of these components function as tools for spirit to utilize in order to express its will on earth. As a result, they both become spiritualized and undergo a profound transformation. For most, however, this is far from the case. As a result of the spiritually oppressive conditions created by the cult, most people are severed from the voice of spirit and are solely identified with the body and the ego personality. Therefore, without the governing will of spirit, the body intelligence and ego personality are forced to take control and make the executive decisions as each person moves around in their lives. In this very common scenario, spirit only has the power to passively observe the activities of life from the background. The main problem with this situation is that the body's intelligence is not an ideal master, as it is focused solely on primal matters, with the main one being survival. If our lives become dictated by survival only, then we operate within the law of the jungle, which is the mentality of eat or be eaten. The law of the jungle is where most people operate, and while strict man-made laws have attempted to minimize the violence and destruction caused by those operating under this law, man still preys upon man on every level imaginable. On top of this, the primal drives of the body that drive executive decisions can become hijacked and distorted through things such as chemically laden substances, overstimulation, and trauma. For example, if a child is raised on chemically altered and sugar-laden processed foods, then their body will develop a perverted and unnatural craving for these types of food in the future. Another example is someone who watches an excessive amount of porn, which distorts their natural and healthy impulses to have sex into extreme fetishes. Or if a person has experienced a trauma or a series of traumas that remain unhealed, then these can cause the body to become incredibly tense and in a state of stress or fight-flight, even when it is in a safe environment. In these circumstances, the body's instinctive commands begin leading one into a state of poor health, addictions, and irrational fear and paranoia, and thus cannot be fully trusted. The ego personality is an even less ideal master, for without the higher guidance of spirit, it is simply a byproduct of its environmental conditioning and education. It will live a life and operate exactly in the way it was programmed to, and yet it will never admit to its ignorance, for it is also engulfed with self-pride and arrogance. It believes that its intellect makes it a superior being. The ego personality is also heavily influenced by the primal drives of the body, particularly the drives of self-preservation and seeking sex and sensory pleasure. This causes the ego personality to also operate within the law of the jungle and to lie, cheat, manipulate, and exploit its fellow man in order to advance its own agendas. It also causes it to seek artificial pleasures such as drugs, stimulants, and indulging in excessive consumption of food. There is nothing necessarily wrong with operating within the law of the jungle, as this is the nature of third density life on Earth, and is the nature of the human body that spirit inhabits. The law of the jungle simply means that we must do whatever is necessary in order to survive and advance ahead of all other life forms. For animals living in the wild, this is the natural way of living and is the highest level of development they are capable of. We humans, however, have the potential alone to operate within the laws of higher spiritual realms instead. This completely transforms the basis on which our life is oriented, and typically means our life becomes about service to others and service to spirit, rather than service to self. Living within the laws of higher spiritual realms can only be achieved by awakening spirit and allowing the body and ego personality to submit to its higher guidance. What occurs as a result of the body and ego personality taking control over one's being is that there is no continuous I, and therefore the I's that we identify with are false, inconsistent, and contradictory to each other. One day we say, I want this, I will do that, and I feel like this. But then the next day we say the same things and yet express very different wants and desires. We believe that these differing wants and desires all represent the same I, just changing its mind. In reality, they represent many different independent I's, which is why they are often so illogical and contradictory. If these independent I's were to have any chance of working together in harmony toward the same goals, then they need a higher governing intelligence to bind them together. Without this governing intelligence, they all pull one in various directions, and the inevitable result is conflict and chaos. In his trilogy series titled Gnosis, Boris Moraviev likens this scenario as similar to allowing every citizen 1 hour each to completely control the country in which they live. One could imagine that the result would be grand chaos, conflict, fear, and confusion, just as it is in the lives of many humans. The human being contains only one supreme governing I that can bring unity and harmony to all of the other I's, and that is the I of the eternal spirit. When or if one's spirit awakens and begins to take control over the various I's, it first has the grand job in front of it of healing the damage caused by these conflicting I's being allowed to run rampant for so many years. This is along with healing the traumas and negative programming installed by the cult. The only way this healing can occur is through providing total and complete love, patience, and nurturing toward ourselves, just like we would provide for a wounded animal. Unfortunately, many instead treat themselves with disdain, criticism, and self-judgment, as well as placing major pressure on themselves to keep plowing forward at a frenetic pace without ever slowing down.